Hey y'all, it's Alirien, and welcome to part 2 of making Alyce Pestle, my original apothecary character from the Renaissance. If you haven't already, go watch part 1, which is where I figure out all of the little tweaks to all the different patterns and pieces that are going to be necessary for this character. But if you have, then welcome. We are moving forward. So you will have already seen, if you watched part 1, I made like 7 mock-ups and tested the fit of most of them. I didn't do the cat mock-up correctly. I'll have to make a second one, but that'll wait for its own video. Today, we are making the official final shift out of the white linen that I got from Burnley Trowbridge. I have washed and dried all of the linen. The gray was having a bit of an issue. I may lay it out a bit longer, but it's a really large piece. It's a really large cut. So I'll have to figure something out with that. It may end up just, as I work through pressing it, might be where the last bits end up getting dry, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Yeah, today we are making the shift. And really the only tweak, the only change from the mock-up that I'm making for this one is when I made the initial mock-up, I added a 1/2 inch on either side of all my measurements for a seam allowance. I think I'm going to take that out. I think I'm just going to cut the pieces based on the initial measurements, and then the seam allowance will come out of that, just so that it's a little bit less big, and it hopefully will make the neckline a little bit smaller, a little bit less room that has to be gathered down, and hopefully that way the back neckline will sit in a better spot, because it was coming down fairly low, much lower than I actually wanted it to. But if not, no worries, we will, figure that out as we get there. That is a mass of pattern pieces sitting on my dress form back there. By the way, I pinned them up on there so that they would be off of the floor and off of my table, so that I'd have all the room I could possibly use for laying out the fabric and cutting it and pinning it and everything. Let's get this shift made. I am using a tutorial from a website called Reconstructing History. I will put the link to it in the description for anyone else who would like to use it. But it basically breaks the pattern down into a bunch of rectangles for the easiest possible way to put this together. There's no bias angles or bias cuts. Everything's on straight grain and everything connects directly to everything else, and it works out. What you're supposed to do is take the loom width as the width of your body pieces. Now, historically, fabric was woven in narrower strips than we make now with our mass manufacture, industrial looms that we have in the fashion industry now. Typically, they were much narrower. So what you actually do is, for a modern cut of fabric, take the full width and you cut it in half, and that is your loom width. You make that the width of your front and back pieces as well as your sleeves, and then you measure from the base of your neck to about the middle of your shin, and that is the length of the body pieces. So you're gonna get 2 pieces, your loom width wide by that length from neck to shin long. That's your front and your back. You're gonna take that same loom width, make 2 more pieces of that width, and the length of them is gonna be the measurement from the point of your shoulder down to your wrist over your bent elbow, because you want it to be long enough that when you bend your arm, you don't want the sleeve to suddenly hike up from your wrist to like the middle of your arm or something. You want it to be long enough that even with a bent elbow, it covers your whole arm. That's your length and your width there. Then you cut 2 side pieces that are the same length as your body pieces, that measurement from the base of your neck to the middle of your shin, and the width of them is half of your loom width. And the last 3 pieces, you need 2 underarm gussets. Those are going to be squares that are 10 inches by 10 inches. And then you need a very long strip of fabric. They suggest 3 inches wide by 40 inches long, and that is your neckband. Now I'm going to hold off on the neckband until I have it gathered down, and then I'm just going to measure how long the neckline is and cut the neckband to be that length, because that's just easier for me. I'm doing the same thing with the waistband on my skirts. So I have, based on this, I'm gonna double check. My linen is 60 inches wide, so my loom width is 30 inches. The measurement from the base of my neck to the middle of my shin is 45 inches, and then my sleeve length is 24 inches over my bent elbow. So those are the measurements that I am working with. I'm gonna go ahead and lay out the linen and get all of that cut, and it's gonna be a lot easier now because as opposed to my muslin, which you can't really see it, it's blending in with the curtain back there, the muslin is wrapped single layered over its bolt, which means that a lot of pieces kind of ended up getting cut individually. Most fabrics are folded along the selvage, like selvage edge to selvage edge, so it's a lot easier to cut matching pieces in one go. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and lay that out and get all that cut. Actually, I'm gonna press the fabric first to make sure there's no wrinkles anywhere, and then I'm gonna lay it out and get all those pieces, get all the rectangles really. It's hard to call a plain rectangle a pattern piece, but I'm gonna get everything ironed and laid out and cut and ready to stitch together.
Don't force me out of bed in your society. Don't push me down the road you've been down. Don't try to fix my head, it's just your anxiety. Don't hush me now, cause I just wanna shout.
Okay, so now that I have all the pieces cut, I will probably go ahead. Miss Bit. Sit. You just had to walk right in the frame. Thank you. I will probably go ahead and serge them. I'll probably just leave the colors that are on my serger though. They're still, I switched out to purple for those inserts for my Ita bag and then switched back to my makeshift khaki to finish Kim's pants. So they're still on the makeshift khaki, but the makeshift khaki is all gray and like natural colors anyway, so I don't think that will stand out. Plus all the serging should be on the inside. So yeah, I think I'm gonna serge it just to be sure that it doesn't fray and to kind of even out the edges a bit, and then we will go ahead and stitch it all together.
You can't keep me in a cage made of tired ideas. It's rusting out faster by the day. Oh, wear your leash, I don't take no deals. I won't stay quiet when there's so much stuff to say.
Now that everything is serged, we're gonna go ahead and start stitching things together. The first step is going to be stitching the front piece to the two side pieces.
Raging just outside our door. You talked about peace on earth and the summer of love while you're sleeping on pills through the war.
So now that I have the side pieces stitched onto the front, I've given the seams a good press from both sides to make them nice and flat. And the next step is to sew one of the gussets to either side at the slit point, because at the top of the side pieces we made a slit that was the same depth from the top as the gussets are long on all four of their sides. So you sew a gusset to each side slit on the edge closer to the front piece, and once that is stitched on and again pressed, we're gonna stitch the short end of the sleeve, because the shorter width in this case is the length that I need from shoulder to wrist to the top of the gusset. So we're gonna stitch the sleeve on now. Also, sorry, it's been a couple of days since last you saw me. I started working on this on Thursday, and then we got news that a storm that we had been watching in the Gulf became a tropical storm and is now a hurricane. So all day yesterday and most of the day today we were prepping for that because it is supposed to make landfall early tomorrow morning. So we were making sure that we had our generator out and available, that we had gas for the generator, because the eye of the storm is going to pass directly west of my area of Baton Rouge. And if you know anything about hurricanes, you know that the eastern side of the storm gets worse wind, worse rain, and more severe damage to anything. So we spent yesterday and today topping off the gas in our cars, getting gas for the generator, pulling the generator out of the storage room because it's been years since we needed it last, making sure that we have access to extension cords to, at least if we lose power, the plan is to plug the refrigerator and probably a small fan or AC unit into the generator to at least keep those going so that we don't get too warm, because it's very hot and very humid right now. August in Louisiana is not fun temperature wise, especially when there's a storm. But yeah, I'm gonna power through as much of this as I can tonight and tomorrow and just pray to all the gods that we don't lose electricity so that I don't have to hand sew all of this. If we lose power, I will hand sew it as best as I can, and just for the sake of getting things put together. And I will probably focus on cutting out as many of these patterns as possible and doing whatever prep work I can that doesn't require a machine, because if we lose electricity, I lose the serger, I lose the sewing machine, and I lose the iron. So, but we will see what happens. But yeah, so we were hurricane prepping, but so now we're going to attach the sleeves to the top of the gussets. So now that the sleeves are attached to the top of the gussets, now we're going to sew the back of the shift into place. From there, sew up all the remaining seams, the other side of the gusset to the side slit, the last remaining side of the gusset to the sleeves, the sleeve seam, and then we're gonna do some gathers. That's a lot of information. Let's get the back piece in first. So now that the back is in, we're going to sew up the other side of the side slits with the gusset in place.
That's a sound amazing. Morning in lights. I hope you enjoyed a week of
Okay, so the gusset's been sewn to the side slit on both sides and the sleeve on a third side. So now we have one side left. So what we're gonna do, this is the sleeve here, this is the gusset, and this is the side section. You're gonna take the gusset and fold it in half along its diagonal. So basically take the two side slit seams and match them up. And you're gonna take your sleeve and fold it in half and bring the other short end down. You're gonna meet the other short edge of your sleeve to that remaining side of the gusset and sew that up, after which you will sew up, gonna move this, and then after you attach the other side of the sleeve to the gusset, you sew up the rest of the side seam of the sleeve on both sides, and then you got a shift, mostly. So that's what we're gonna do now, is the remaining gusset seam and the sleeve seam.
That's my answer. But some questions.
Okay, so now I've got all the seams done, and I've run the gathering stitch along the entire circumference of the neckline and the shoulders. So now comes the tedious process of gathering this down to actually fit on me, because as you can see, it is falling off of me right now. So I'm actually gonna see how long this gathering takes. I suspect it will take a while because it really does not want to move past this seam between the body and the gusset and the sleeve, but I'll get it gathered as quickly as possible, and I'll let you know at the end just how long this took so that you can be prepared if you do this yourself. Following this, I'll be hanging it overnight so that I can let the fabric do any stretching that it needs to on the bias, and then I will hem it tomorrow. And while I wait, I will probably work on some of the other pieces of this costume. So yeah, let's see how long this gathering takes. gathered down. Where did it go? And it took me about an hour. But I got it gathered down to about a placement that I like, and the threads are refusing to stay exactly where I want them to appear, but you know, I'll fix that in the morning when I have a fresher brain and fresher eyes. Getting gathers to stay exactly where I want them to has always been annoying for me. It's always been tricky, but I am at least going to trim these threads as I just did so that I don't have all of that hanging off the front. So now I'm going to gather down the cuffs because these do not need to be as ridiculously large as they are. And as I did with the mock-up, I'm actually going to gather it down to the size of my elbow, or slightly over the size of my, I want it to be the widest part of my forearm so that I can roll these up and gently slide them into the crook of my elbow and have them, you know, up here. And that way, when you know, they are rolled up, it makes this nice, big, beautiful poof in the sleeve, which will be fun to run around with. I'm pretty happy. Here, let me tilt you down just a bit so you can see it better. But I'm pretty happy with how this looks, front and back. So I'm now going to remove the pattern pieces that are draped over my dress form. I'm gonna put this over the dress form overnight. Well, I'm gonna gather down the cuffs and I'm gonna leave this on my dress form overnight so that it can hang, so that I can hem it even to the ground in the morning. Let me get some cuff gathering done here, shall we? Struggled way more than I should have to get this thing on this form. A, because the form is crooked. B, because the form is not my size. And C, because I hate tying off gathers because, and I guess the thread that I decided to use for this isn't, my top thread I think is technically like an upholstery thread or something. It's a weird thickness, and for some reason the knot for the neckline has come undone 5 times. I'm gonna have to redo some of that in the morning, but I don't want to deal with actually stitching the gathers into place right now because I want to have an extra pair of hands or extra eyes tomorrow to really nicely distribute the gathers along the whole thing. It looks wonky and janky on there because, again, it's not made for the form. The form is not my size. The form is also just a display form, not a true dress form, and it's not made for historic clothing like this. So yeah, I have fairly broad shoulders for my frame. This form does not. I have about the same bust size as my form, but I've got larger hips, you know, things like that. It kept slipping off and trying to fall, and the knot coming undone multiple times means that the gathers haven't quite stayed where they're supposed to. And my form, basically for the last 4 out of however many years that I've owned it, has sat at like a tilt on its base. I don't know why. It's probably just because it's cheap and it's burlap over wood with these like silver polka dots on it. This thing has clean come off multiple times and I can't get it to go all the way back in anymore. I don't even understand how it was put in there in the first place. It's falling apart and I need a proper dress form. I'm making a bootstrap form, sort of. I printed out the pattern and was gonna start making one, and then other projects got in the way. So my poor patrons who helped me save up to be able to do it have, you know, been waiting and waiting, but here it is on the form. It's gonna sit here overnight and I will hem it in the morning. And I am tired and just really need a fresh brain and fresh eyes. We are gonna hold off on any of the rest of this for tomorrow, though the rest of these things will be separate videos anyway, so you don't care about that right now. But this is gonna sit overnight, and I will talk to all of you in the morning. The shift has sat on the form for at least 12 hours, so now I'm gonna go ahead and stitch up the gathered spots to hold the gathering in place. I may actually stitch all the way around them twice just to be sure. I'm gonna have to probably fix some of the gathering around the neckline because my knot in the back kept coming undone. Yeah. But yeah, we're gonna stitch that in place and I'm gonna put it on, and I'm gonna have my mom help me fold up the hem so that it is parallel as best as possible with the ground, and then we'll stitch the hem in place and this bad boy will be done. Let's stitch some gathers in place.
Did anything
finished shift, and you can tell when I move in certain ways that I had to take in the back by several inches, and I took in each of the cuffs another ½ inch. That was done off screen because it was done in the middle of the first festival season. I've actually worn this now for 2 festival seasons out in Hammond, and it has worked very, very well for all of that. It's wrinkled and it's worn and it's got some stains here and there, but that's okay. That was the point of these. It's been through the wash, it's been steamed, it's been ironed, and it has held up to everything. I am planning on making a fresh, better fitting one, because part of why I had to take this one in around the neckline is, as I suspected in all of my struggle to get this on the dress form, my gathers ended up loosening. Every time I wore this, even with my skirts and my bodice on, the shoulders were trying to fall off of me, and because I was wearing this in the period accurate form, right now I'm wearing jeans and an undershirt so that in case it is translucent you can't see anything you're not supposed to. On the grounds I was wearing this in the historically accurate way. But I took things in. The sleeves usually end up tucked in my elbows like this, so I've got a nice big poof there. I'm going to be remaking the smock at some point relatively soon so that I have a better one for my next Ren Fair garb, and also just as a general purpose thing. I'm probably going to make a few that I can trade out here and there. But I'm very, very pleased with this first ever full linen smock that I have made by myself from scratch, and I can't wait for you guys to see the rest of this costume because I'm so stinking proud of it. Like, it's my first historic garb that I ever made was this shift, so it will always be very special, and I will continue to use it in spite of its less than ideal condition, what with the huge take-in right here and the extra like ½ inch that's pinched into the sleeves. There it is, right there is where I took that in. But yeah, I'm very, very pleased with this. Yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. If you did, you know where all the buttons and the links are to show me your love. Super huge thankful shout out to my coven of patrons. They are the ones who are most pivotal in continuing to make these vlogs and projects and costumes happen and help me make a living making costumes and content. If you have enjoyed this video and want to see more of Alyce Pestle, there will be more episodes coming soon, but I do have another video which you can find in the cards and below of how I did all of the patterns and the mock-up process, and I have a playlist linked with all of my costume work that's been posted on the channel so far. Stay tuned for the process of making Alyce's petticoat and skirt, as well as the Lego Star Wars VODs. Those will be up soon. I think the first one will have already posted by the time this goes up, and I will see you all again very soon with another video. Keep aiming, my loves. Mwah. And I think I'm gonna add this for all of Alyce's videos because she is Irish. I think a sláinte is called for.